the people buried in the 3,000-year-old tombs at Yanghai originally come from? This was a question the archaeologists set out to answer. The evidence pointed to a European connection, but the study of 500 skulls recovered from the tombs would point to a diversity of origins, as is reviewed in Part 7 of the Tombs at Yanghai on Journeys in Time.
In the spring of 2003, archaeologists working at the Yanghai tomb site in Shanshan County, Xinjiang, found something very unusual. In zone number 3, they came across a number of objects bearing fish-scale decorations, along with scraps of woolen fabrics and evidence of ancient tattoos. All this indicated a link with the ancient culture uncovered at the Pazarik burial site in Siberia. It was from there the archaeologists surmised that people had first migrated to Yanghai in the Turpan Basin over 3,000 years ago. The Yanghai burial site lies to the south of the Huoyan Mountains in the Gobi Desert. The site is divided into 3 areas. Zone number 1 covers 15,000 square meters. Zone number 2 covers 24,000 square meters. And zone number 3, 15,000 square meters. Each zone is so densely crowded with tombs that in some places they are separated by just 5 or 6 meters. The scale of the site and the sheer number of tombs suggests that people were buried here during a very long historical period. In the design of the tombs and the burial customs, there are clear differences from anything ever seen before. The archaeologists have identified 3 distinct tomb types: 2-tier, vertical, and side-built. The archaeologists were keen to get a clear picture of the tomb's timeline. For this, they needed to date the 3 types. Earlier archaeological finds had already demonstrated that the vertical tombs were older than the side-built ones. The 2-tier type was clearly even older, since this type yielded bronze wares such as axes, knives, and horse gear dating back to the 8th century BC. This was far earlier than both the vertical and side-built types. Based on the available evidence, Lu Engor determined the timeline of the 3 types of tombs. The 2-tier tombs came first, then the vertical tombs, followed by the side-built tombs.
我们现在发现是墓葬呢，它的形制是不一样的。那么它里边的，它这个墓葬结构是不一样的。那样它里边的随葬品，包括这个人骨架的那个埋葬方式，它是那个仰身直指啊，还是仰身屈指， 还是侧身啊，这样一种代表他的这个葬式的这样一种方式。随着这个墓葬形制的不同，他的葬式呢也有所不同。也就是说，我们根据这个在考古学上呢，我们根据它的这个墓葬形制呢，我们可以排出来一个序列。这个序列呢，就是一般我们讲的逻辑序列。比如说它是从大到小，还是从小到大，还是从深到浅，还是从浅到深，这样一个序列。那么通过这个墓葬形制，发掘这个墓葬形制的对比，我们就可以搞出来这么个逻辑序列。
The logical sequence, as they determined it, indicated that the Yanghai burial site actually dated from 3 eras, and each had its own burial customs. Zone number 1 contained mainly oval shape and 2-tier tombs, although in the northern part there were vertical tombs, which extended into the southwestern section of zone number 2. The side-built tombs were found in zone number 3.
根据这个洋海墓地的墓葬形制和出土的器物来判断呢，洋海这3处墓地呢，它的那个整个虽然是相对独立的，中间有这个沙漠把它隔开，但那个墓地呢还是离得比较近，墓葬那个分布呢密集有序，都有相同的布局，而且3处墓地的墓葬的那个葬式和葬俗以及随葬品呢都是很相似的，因此呢，我们认为这3处墓地呢因为同一种文化的遗存。 而洋海这3个墓地的差异呢，则是由于时代的延续发展变化的结果，因为时代的不同，所以有差异。
The differences also reveal the ancient Yanghai people's progress from a barbarian to a civilized society. The tombs are like a mirror. They reflect virtually every aspect of their lives. The occupants of zone number 1 were male, buried alone, and accompanied by a few pottery objects. But there were no bronze or wooden articles. This suggested a time period not long after Turpan was first settled and before coloured pottery arrived from the civilization of the Central Plains. Also, many of the tombs contained evidence of human sacrifices. Most of the victims were women, an obvious sign of a male-dominated society. However, beginning with zone number 2, there seemed to have been a marked change in the barbarian burial customs. Most of the tombs had 2 or more occupants, a male and a female, or a male with multiple females. Evidently, by this time, the family had become the basic unit in society. The burial objects had also changed. There were no more human sacrifices. Instead, there were the heads of domestic animals, such as oxen, horses, and sheep.
我们判断呢，这可能是一种社会进步的标志，因为在1号墓地这个椭圆形这个墓葬中呢，或者是墓葬的周围，都发现了大量的用人殉葬的这种迹象。那么在2层台这种墓呢，和直壁墓的这种现象呢就不见了，取而代之的是大量的动物随葬品。这说明呢，这2种墓要晚于这个椭圆形的这种墓。
Where had the people buried in the 3,000-year-old tombs at Yanghai originally come from? This was a question the archaeologists set out to answer. The evidence pointed to a European connection, but the study of 500 skulls recovered from the tombs would point to a diversity of origins, as is reviewed in Part 7 of the Tombs at Yanghai on Journeys in Time.
There was also a marked increase in scale. The tombs in Zone Number 2 were not only larger than those in Zone Number 1, also there were significantly more of them. Zone Number 2 also yielded more burial objects than the other two burial sites. They tended to be more beautiful and better made. The indication was that the period from which these tombs dated was one of relative prosperity for the people of Yanghai. Zone Number 2 yielded large numbers of single-ear plain-coloured pots, coloured pottery items and beads. The major motif consisted of decorative lines, mostly spirals, triangles and even saw teeth. In their shapes and decorative patterns, these objects were beginning to reveal the influence of the culture of the Central Plains. Evidently, the people of Yanghai were encouraging contacts with other places. However, Zone Number 3 reveals the decline of Yanghai culture. Burials were apparently more disorganized, and there was an absence of finely crafted coloured pottery. Most of the burial objects were simple and coarsely made pots, bowls and cups decorated with very simple patterns. They exhibited a striking inferiority to those from Zone Number 2. There were, however, similarities with the artifacts found in the nearby Subeishi burial site. Based on carbon-14 testing conducted by Peking University, it was already known that the Subeishi site dated from around the 3rd century BC.
Yanghai 墓地的这个最早的这个遗存呢，应该是青铜时代晚期的这样的一个概念。那么，如果原来提到的苏贝西文化，它是一个早期铁器时代的一个文化，那么Yanghai墓地的这些遗存呢，它就比这个原来的苏贝西文化要往前延伸了大概有那么600-700年这个时间。这样呢，Yanghai墓地从青铜时代晚期一直到那个西汉之前呢，延续不断这1000多年的这样的一个墓地。它这文化是有延续性的，也就是说，我们谈到的1、2、3号墓地，基本上是一个从早到晚有这么个发展的序列，就包括墓葬形制啊、陶器的类型啊，还有一些木器、石器的类型，基本上它都是这样延续下来的。
According to the timeline worked out by the archaeologists, Zone Number 1 was the first phase of the Yanghai burial site, dating from the late Bronze Age, roughly 1000 to 700 BC. Zone Number 2 was the second phase, from 700 to 300 BC. And Zone Number 3, the third phase, was from 300 BC until 200 AD. This meant that the Yanghai burial site was in uninterrupted use for over 1,200 years. But who were these people who lived in the same place for so long? And more importantly, what caused them to disappear, apparently without trace? Lu Ngor would often sit beside one of the tombs, contemplating such questions. The differences in the tomb's layout and the diversity of finds they yielded were only part of a far greater mystery. Of all the puzzles presented by the Yanghai site, the most intriguing concerned the people themselves.
Yanghai 这个墓地呢，因为自然环境的关系呢，保存的人类学资料比较多，尤其是像头骨啊，我们收集了好几百件。你比如说像这个，它的那个眉骨呢就很高，眉骨弓比较发达，眼睛呢比较下陷一些，另外呢就是它的那个像颧骨啊这个地方比较陷弱一点，这个呢就是欧罗巴人种的特点。
Eventually, Lu Ngor came to an astonishing conclusion. Based on the shape of the skulls, he concluded that the occupants of the tombs were Europeans. He wondered how and why 3,000 years ago, Europeans had travelled all the way to Yanghai. And had people with European features been the exception here, or relatively commonplace? His years of experience told him that Europeans had been quite commonplace. Previously, archaeologists in Xinjiang had found other traces of Europeans. One such case was the famous discovery in 1980 of the so-called lowland beauty at the Tierbanhe burial site in Lop Nor.
Where had the people buried in the 3,000-year-old tombs at Yanghai originally come from? This was a question the archaeologists set out to answer. The evidence pointed to a European connection, but the study of 500 skulls recovered from the tombs would point to a diversity of origins, as is reviewed in Part 7 of the Tombs at Yanghai on Journeys in Time.
The lowland beauty had been dated at 3,800 years old. She was the first known European to have lived in Xinjiang. Archaeologists subsequently found more bodies, apparently of Europeans, at a place close to lowland. Others were discovered at the Subeishi burial site, not far from Yanghai. One body found in Subeishi had pale brown hair. Its eyes were sunken, the nose had a high bridge, and the face was long. All are typically European features. To confirm his theory, Lu Ngor measured 19 skulls unearthed at Subeishi. He found that 13 were European, 3 Mongol, and another 3 from mixed races. From this, he concluded that the Turpan Basin at the time was inhabited by more than one race. Lu Ngor himself was confident about his conclusion, but would it be accepted in academic circles? Did the archaeological finds from Subeishi present a complete anthropological picture of the Turpan Basin in prehistoric times? Were the people buried at Yanghai somehow related to those buried at Subeishi? There seemed to be so many questions crying out for answers. And if these answers weren't found, the 500 skulls unearthed at Yanghai would forever remain a mystery. In the winter of 2004, Professor Han Kangxin from the Archaeological Institute at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences volunteered his assistance. Over the ensuing 6 months, he cleaned, sorted, registered and measured every one of the 500 skulls. In the course of this, he gathered a considerable amount of data, which he spent the next 4 years carefully studying. He made considerable progress in understanding the Yanghai people and was able to present a number of conclusions about them from an academic point of view.
一般来讲，头骨，人的头骨，不管是大人种、小人种，都这个大同小异。这个小异在什么地方？主要是在这个面部。面部的什么特征呢？所以像这个鼻骨啊，强烈的隆起，黄种呢，这个地方就比较低，比较扁平。这样的鼻骨特别的强烈隆起，鼻基特别的放大，只能说它有一个很强大的鼻子。另外呢，就是说它的那个眼眶比较深陷，这个呢实际上是一种闭锁型的眼眶。从面部特征这个综合起来看呢，这个面部可以肯定的完全是西方系统的面型。
The mountain of data needed to be processed, compared, and analyzed. It was an enormous undertaking. Before the final results were ready, Professor Han could only offer an opinion based on his experience as an anthropologist.
那么对洋海这个人群呢，究竟是古代人群，究竟是什么样的人种系统，这是大家很感兴趣的。那么根据这个过去我对这个新疆地区的不同遗址的人骨研究啊，新疆的白种人在古代是分布的很普遍的。那么现在呢，就是洋海究竟是不是也是这样啊？那么现在这个工作还没有完全做完，还正在做啊。但就这两个挑选出来典型的一个头骨来讲，这是可以肯定是白种人是无疑的。
Judging by the eyes, among the 500 skulls unearthed, Europeans account for a considerable percentage. His research has revealed one key fact. In ancient times, Xinjiang was inhabited by multiple ethnic groups, dominated by Orientals and Europeans. Among the Europeans in Xinjiang, Professor Han identified different branches: Indo-European, Caucasian, and Mediterranean. They had evidently come from different places via different routes. However, their precise ethnic origin is almost impossible to trace. Then what about the original inhabitants of Yanghai? Where did they come from, and what was their ethnic background? This was a further mystery that needed to be solved.
这几百个头骨里头，是不是作为同一个体质类型的人群，还是可能有不同的成分啊？这是现在目前还没有研究到这个程度，还需要进一步研究。所以关于这个洋海这个人群呢，白种人是肯定有的，但是不是以白种人为主体，混有其他的，或者黄种人为主体啊，混有其他的，这还需要进一步的判断。
To date, more than 500 sets of human remains have been unearthed from the Yanghai site. Evidently, they once formed a complete social group, but after being buried for 3,000 years, they have lost their individual identities. Scientists today now face a major challenge in trying to trace their origin. Until Han Kangxin provides conclusive answers, many questions remain open. Still, the archaeologists and researchers are continuing their work in the belief that with the help of modern technology, they can achieve breakthroughs.
The 500 skulls found at the ancient burial site at Yanghai in Shanshan County yielded a wealth of information. But they were also at the heart of a perplexing mystery. Could the strange injuries found on them really be the result of ancient craniotomies? The matter became the subject of a major academic debate. Find out how in the 8th part of the tombs at Yanghai on Journeys in Time. At Yanghai on Journeys in Time.